Friends, welcome back. This is the fifth and final session of the new digital age, and the time has come to crack the code on innovation in a post-COVID world. How do we unleash innovation disruption at a time when our entire world is disrupted? On the face of it, it's a pretty dark picture. Take the airline industry alone. If you look at the number of flights that were landing and taking off in mid-February of this year, it was down by 70%. You fast forward the last time the data was available online, or the most updated data in late August, it's still down by 47%. How are industries of the world handling the most disruptive of years? You can almost imagine the corporate world divided into two. Those who are doing the traditional things that one does in order to save a company, versus those who are literally reimagining their digital transformation. As you will soon hear from a top airline executive, he talks about adapting quickly to a moving landscape. The airline industry has had to accelerate its digital transformation. So whether you're trying to keep an airline afloat, or whether you have Fortune 500 clients who are finding their way in a post-COVID world, the question is, can innovation be a flashpoint for coming out of this ahead? Now, I am, once again, going to invite you to respond to a one-question poll, which is in the poll tab of the conference platform. The question is, what will be the focus of large, innovative corporations post-pandemic? Now, to take on these complicated topics, to say the least, is a friend and colleague, Laly David. Laly is a partner at OurCrowd and the head of business development. OurCrowd is one of the most active investors in Israel, with over 160 portfolio companies spanning all verticals and sectors. To moderate this session, Laly brings a breadth of experience and insight and is indeed one of the top talents in Israel's tech ecosystem. I turn it over to you, Laly.
Thanks, Wendy, and thank you, Startup Nation Central, for having me here today. In today's panel, Reimagining Industry Under Extreme Disruption, I'm delighted to dive closely into broad yet focused discussion on the technological effects of COVID-19 on specific industries. As you all probably know, the former world, whom we all knew, is changing. Aviation, transportation, and businesses as a whole are in massive shifts, and so is their connection to technology. As an opener for this session, I would like to share with you a few of the highlights that we at OurCrowd are seeing in the investment arena. One is the core, the actual investment scene, and the other is more process-focused. In terms of the investment scene, there's a general feeling that everything has slowed down or even halted in the last 6 months, but the reality here in Israel proves differently, with nearly $2.5 billion invested in Israeli tech startups in Q2 of this year. This is a 10% growth in comparison to Q2 in 2019. We at OurCrowd have made 27 investments in new companies and over 30 follow-on investments since March 1st, deploying about $100 million, with some of the investment check sizes larger than $10 million. So it might be that the strategic investors, whether via balance sheets or CVCs, have slowed down, but financial VCs have not. The overall investment trend is basically a private pandemic play. Private markets with lack of quick liquidity are by definition more immune to volatility that we actually see in public markets. In the private market, investors clearly are looking for the pandemic play in healthcare and the new normal, including mobility, aviation, remote work, and other elements comprising our new normal. In terms of process, the boundaries between here and there, local, global, are completely blurred. While previously, in order to make an investment decision in a local startups, foreign VCs had to meet the entrepreneurs, and similarly, to make a strategic collaboration, multinational companies had to meet the company. Now everyone and everything gets done over Zoom. This is a huge opportunity. When we hold meetings virtually, we literally can't sense a difference other than time zones between colleagues and partners at home or at the home office 10 kilometers from us or those that are across the ocean. So I'm delighted to introduce the following two speakers to discuss together with them the COVID-19 effects on their industries. Ash Jokhoo, Chief Information and Data Officer at Virgin Atlantic, and Thomas Reichert, Chairman Global Practices and Global Leader Digital BCG at the Boston Consulting Group. Happy to have you both here with us.
Hi.
We'll start with Ash. So what is Virgin Atlantic's new normal today, and what are the expectations for 2022 and beyond?
So firstly, thank you for asking me to join this session today. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you and the Startup Nation Central viewers and watchers who are on at the moment. So I'm the Chief Information Officer and Data Officer at Virgin Atlantic, and I've been involved in transformation in various sectors for a number of years, specifically really focusing on reimagining sectors. And so when you're asking about expectations of 2022 and beyond, we were already thinking about reimagining what we do here at Virgin Atlantic, but COVID has clearly made the next few years a real area of focus for us. We expect our business to slowly and steadily recover. Very recently, we had to do a private-only solvent recapitalisation of our business, bringing in 1.2 million pounds sterling, 1.6 billion dollars of so 1.2 billion dollars sterling, so 1.2 billion pounds sterling, and 1.6 billion dollars into our business. And so now we have surety going forward of rebuilding our business. We now need to rebuild it, and rebuilding it really means looking further and deeper into our technologies, our processes, and strategically how we can reimagine ourselves and emerge stronger using technology and data to be that key driver. But at Virgin, our customers and our people are everything. And so customer-driven, outcome-based, purpose-driven strategies are key for us to deliver further and be stronger as we come out of this crisis in 2021 and 2022. And the other thing I'd say is our customers' expectations are going to increase. You've mentioned Zoom there, Laly, and how people are interacting now and doing business. Our business has always been one of leisure and business travel, and we need to now meet our customers where they are given this crisis and adapt very quickly to the changing needs and asks of our business. And so that human differentiation that Virgin Atlantic is known for has to be underpinned by a technology and a strategy that really drives us into 2021 and 2022 and making use of any possibility of growth, which is what we're about. All businesses want to grow. Previously to COVID, we were on our growth trajectory to be one of the most loved travel organisations, or the most loved travel organisation in the world, and we want to continue to that.
Well, thank you. I think establishing a strategy is actually a great segue to ask Tom, how do you build a new strategy after such an extreme disruption and with so much uncertainty in the future?
Laly, thank you for having me here. I'm thrilled to be with you. We are a globally operating management consulting firm and business build firm. So we operate in 50 countries, and a lot of our work is actually in the digital and technology world. So we get to see a lot of what happens with our clients across the world, and also with corporate venturing with the next generation of growth tech companies that are leading the world. It is very clear that COVID has created unprecedented distractions and changes for us. So in some way, the only certainty is the uncertainty in front of us. But we also know that in crises and in situations like that, about 14% of all companies excel and come out stronger. Stronger growth, stronger profitability. And the trick is to make the decisions now that get you to that point. So what does that mean for your strategy? It means there will be some elements that are very clear. So if you are a brick and mortar retailer, it's very clear that you need to go into a very strong online presence. We've seen customer behaviors change, commerce is taking off. I assume a lot of your investments are going to be in trends that our consumers have changed, and Ash just spoke about a set of those ones as well. But there's another part that is around the experimentation, the reimagination, and there it is going to be a lot about partnerships, ecosystems, and innovations with startups that can help to fundamentally reimagine what a company is doing. We think about that very much in the concept of what we call the Bionic Company, a company that brings digital and people together in a new way. It needs to have a very clear purpose, a very clear strategy for the parts you know, and flexibility for the ones you don't. But then it needs to bring together people and technology to work together in a different way so that you can be much faster in reaction times and benefit from the trends that are around to come out as a leader in the future.
So in this context, maybe, what do you see the general role of technology that BCG sees in the disrupted industries? Which types of technologies are the most promising ones in this context?
We see clearly technology to be the key topic here. And when we survey our executives and clients, 80% are saying they're going to make major investments into the technology space, which I think is good news for all of you participating in this session. The areas where we see most happening on the technology side, so the biggest play in our mind is going to be quantum, but it's going to be a more long-term game. We think it is a $500 billion market at least. The two markets that are closer to home and closer to here are AI and IoT. In AI, NLP, knowledge management, fraud, security, all those types of things. And in IoT, everything around the asset tracking, remote asset management, and so on. And then the combination of the two, so much will not just be about single technologies, it will be about combinations of technology. The other space that we're very excited about is the whole biotech space, synthetic biology, bringing together data science and biology in a very clear investment profile, a clear exit path, a lot of investment going into that space, and a lot of novelty happening with a very high interest in the healthcare space that is going on right now.
I think we're fully aligned on those trends for us as OurCrowd, as investors. Ash, perhaps moving to you, in such a disrupted world, what is Virgin Atlantic's strategy and what is the role of technology? Which types of technologies are most relevant to you in this context?
Yes, I think just building on what Tom's just said there, the role of decisioning and how you can leverage some of the insight that you're gaining in this rapidly changing world is really important. So decisioning technologies and ensuring that they're embedded into your end-to-end processes so that you can make commercial business decisions at the right time, but also your customers are able to make choice-driven decisions based on their preferences to get even more benefit from the services that you're providing is really important. The other thing is we're seeing heightened focus on understanding our processes around safety and security, specifically the health element, clearly. And so we need to continue to invest and use technologies that give that transparency of data, but also really think about how that integrates in a safe way so that customers can choose which and how their data is being used, and they don't feel like that corporates or businesses like ours are taking advantage. But at Virgin specifically, the safety and security of our customers is absolutely paramount. The hygiene steps that we're taking, some of the technologies that we're using to clean our planes and to make sure that we have the cleanest aeroplanes available in the market is absolutely focused. But then the collaboration is really important back in the office. And so those knowledge management systems and sharing capability and collaborating and having shared understanding is really important to provide that resilience. So those are really the areas that we're really focusing on. The other thing I'd say is loyalty. We have an amazing loyalty program here at Virgin Atlantic. and that continued growth of our customer base, using technologies and nudging them and nudging our customers. And hopefully many of you are flying. We completed our second flight today from Virgin Atlantic to London. And one of the things that we need to do is continue to invest in technology that grows our loyalty and the amazing service that we provide with our human side, but underpinned by technology and loyalty systems that reward our customers.
So maybe taking this into sort of a deeper level inside your companies, global crises are unpredictable, but from the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, how are you making your company more resilient? This is addressed to both of you.
Either way, I'm happy to get started. Resilience.
Please, Tom.
Is a very, very important topic in this time. And most people think about resilience, first of all, as let's do the things that this will not happen to us again. Stock outs, cash, that is not available, and so on. But actually, what we have seen is that the performance of companies in crisis situations like this explains 5 times more the contributions for long-time value than the value that is created in what we call more the normal times. So it's very important to have a capability for companies in these crisis situations, and not just to think about we plan for the general course of life, and then from time to time crises happen and we need to react. So it's a more important capability. And the patterns are actually quite clear. First of all, it's all about getting to stability. Most places of the world, but not everywhere, are getting to that point. Then it's about recovery. Again, a number of industries are there and some others are not yet. It's quite the range, that we get to see. And, Ash, you just described very well where you are. And then, we've got some healthcare players, and, we see where financial services is. So there's a big range, in getting to recovery. But very important is then to think about what we call, how do you flourish? How do you leapfrog? How do you reimagine the world afterwards? So those 3 things are all part of the resilience journey. When we look at ourselves, not so dissimilar to many of the companies that we're working with, we've been very focused on how to get through the crisis. We had a very clear playbook. We had expected that we would see some crisis around this point of time. We actually would have thought more an economic crisis, than a pandemic, like this one. But we had a pretty clear playbook what we wanted to do, and then we are a very entrepreneurial company, so it's not so easy. But we basically let go. We let go our teams across the world to adapt as quickly as possible to the situations our clients were in, and to team with them together and to look for the opportunities that are there. Whilst we supported them globally with some of the people-related topics that we needed to do, some general research across the board. And then we've been looking, probably very much like you, Laly, where are the new opportunities? Where do we want to invest? Where do we want to build out? What can we do as a firm, across the board? And I think those elements, letting the organization, the entrepreneurial power of an organization go a bit, think about where you can add value from the center, but look for the new opportunities from the moment the crisis starts. I think are general themes that are very helpful for companies thinking through building out their resilience.
I think, it takes an experienced company that has been through a crisis before, 1 or 2 or more, to be able to actually let go. That's an interesting observation, I think. Ash, maybe you can share from your perspective, please.
Well, yeah, Virgin Atlantic, founded in 1985, are 36 years old. We are the oldest startup you can think of, and we acted fast. We were the first out of the blocks to watch our cash, to take action in terms of how people are working, where people are working, where flights were flying. And I think speed and agility to making decisions is in our DNA. We're entrepreneurial in everything that we do, and innovation is in our DNA. So that was not really, that wasn't a discussion point here at Virgin Atlantic. That's just how we are. But what we have done is we've gone further. We've made forever changes. Not to Tom's point, changes that we are just going to make or consider for this crisis, but changes that allow us to re-emerge stronger and to take any failure demand or any areas of our business that we believe are no longer relevant, and take the opportunity to, I use that phrase a lot, leap forward when the good times come back. We will be in a leaner, faster way of operating. And so having faith and taking a few risks is really important. The manner in which we have achieved our private-only solvent recapitalization and not had government help, the manner in the way that we are actually thinking, even now, me spending time talking to Startup Nation Central and thinking about our future technology and innovating is the difference at Virgin Atlantic, and is why we believe we will be part of that 14% that come out not only stronger but world beating. I also think around resilience, human beings. I know this is a technology-led focus, but you have to think carefully and thoughtfully about ensuring that you have the leadership capability throughout your organization. So we've taken this time also to really think about the great people that make Virgin Atlantic and ensuring that we have that resilience and capability, not just for now, but also when we start growing again. And that's really where our focus has been.
I think it's very interesting, the focus that you place on the talent inside the company and the customers is a major force for Virgin Atlantic. So the next question is maybe a little bit self-serving, so forgive me for that. The question is, what is the role of the Israeli innovators that they can play in your plans for the future? We'll start with Tom and move to Ash.
Thank you. We see Israel as a very important, market and space for technology innovation, in the global ecosystem. Israel has, most startup investment in the world per capita. You have a very vibrant ecosystem and you have amazing talent. We have a strong team. We build out the Tel Aviv Tech Hub, and we enjoy our partnership with Startup Nation Central and all the backwards and forwards that we can have with the set of the entrepreneurs there. It's always been an important part for us in working with our corporate clients to make the match between corporate clients and startups. And it's actually proven for us to be one of the best markets to be able to do that. So for example, we've just had a luxury fashion retailer collaborate with one of the Israeli startups on building an immersive commerce experience, and there are rows of those ones. You said it in the introduction, Laly. It's been possible to move a lot of that into the virtual world, and that is thanks to a lot of the flexibility of the many of you out there to engage in virtual ways with corporate clients across the world and to identify the opportunities where you can partner. So it's very exciting for us to see what happens in this market. We look to you, we look to China, clearly we look to the US and to different parts in Europe, but you are totally up there in our prioritization for where we want to go to find innovative ideas for our corporate clients.
It's a great answer, and I'll just say that we share the same office building with your presence in Israel, in Tel Aviv, so that's a great point. And Ash, from your side?
Well, Laly, thanks for mentioning office buildings. Our offices in Tel Aviv are in the Labs building, which is just full of startup. That wasn't by mistake. We are absolutely, I'll take good ideas from anywhere in the world if it helps us deliver what we need to deliver. And we have some of the greatest minds and one of the best places in the world to do business is in Israel, no doubt. And that diversity of thought and to some of the problems that we have is essential. And so I really do believe that working with partners and innovative thinkers, and we're a better place to do it than Israel and that area is essential for us. We have one of our core pillars at Virgin Atlantic is best in partnering, and that's not a lip service pillar. We genuinely, if you look at our joint venture with Delta, and the way we work with Air France KLM, the same is true for technology. We really need to understand and to build on what Tom said about that bionic capability. What we are good at is service and real delivery of end-to-end journeys and seamless connections between Tel Aviv and London Heathrow and the rest of the world. And where we may need help and certainly more experience and newer thinking, we should partner, and we need to use hubs like Israel to ensure that we get the right solutions at the right time. And now we need to do it faster than ever, because we can no longer work in the cadence that we were before, because we believe that there will be exponential growth, and so some of these transformations will really need a very different set of mindset and a different investment profile, with technologies that are different. There is not a more exciting time than a crisis to really move forward on the next stages of technology and growth of an organization.
Well, I think the Israeli entrepreneurs are definitely famous for their agility and ability to adapt and adjust and pivot. So Israel is indeed the right place to search for such innovation in these days as well. Just a few more questions, more from the crowd. So Tom, you mentioned the digital transformation, and BCG's vision of the company of the future is not just about technology, but also about the people and about the purpose. Perhaps you could elaborate on how people and purpose will be critical in success navigation of crisis.
It's actually very closely connected, Laly. Namely, we find that a lot of excitement and engagement in staff is driven by the purpose of an organization. Why are we here? What are we doing? And what is therefore the path and how I contribute to it as a firm? So we have started, you can imagine that in our heritage as a strategy consulting firm, with a lot of very hard-hitting market analysis and where's the opportunity and how can we create the value, and that is still at the heart of our DNA. But we now deeply believe it needs an emotional connectivity of that strategy with an overall purpose for the company to make enormous amounts of progress. And Virgin, Ash, you've been speaking about it and you've demonstrated as a company over many, many years, is a great example of a very strong purpose-driven organization. It is quite important when you think through disruptive activities versus task-based activities, because you get a different creativity, a different engagement, and a different ownership mentality, almost a startup-like ownership mentality in your employee base with a very strong purpose. You look then at the people side, we think, while companies have changed on the technology side quite a bit and have done silo investments, a digital marketing investment here, AI in operations there, as it has to scale, you have to deal with the whole workforce. And that means retraining the workforce, learning new skills. That also means dealing with some of the fear, that is in the workforce, who have been working for 20, 30 years in a particular way. And we have to be thoughtful about how we manage that, what the role of leaders is and what leadership behaviors is, particularly now as we work in a remote, and will probably work in a remote hybrid world, going forward. So we believe that these themes will be as important as the core technology topics over the next couple of years to come, to be really successful in reimagining companies and industries.
Well, thank you. For Ash, you talk about the change in the customer experience of flying during COVID-19. What do you think the main challenges are for travelers during this pandemic, and how can technology help with this?
Well, I think we've all seen every country is dealing with it differently. And when you're traveling from a location, understanding what the rules are from place to place and what the processes need to be, I think is going to be the navigation point, especially with different testing regimes and different levels of quarantine and track and trace around the world. Technology has to be, in aviation, we have this term called seams. It talks about how when you take one flight and you go to another flight, you expect seamless connections over your long haul travel, or when you're traveling around the world. And I think we're going to have to provide that seamless technology view of the post-COVID world in terms of track and trace, in terms of understanding what the rules are in quarantine, the levels of assurance that there are in different areas, and providing that information to customers in a way that they can consume and is simple. Across multiple governments, across multiple airports, across multiple differing companies. And I don't know if you saw recently, there have been some updates on iOS, and I'm sure there will be on Android. Technology is going to be key on how we plug and play and share this data across the piece. And so my role, and I think the role of all leaders in travel and hospitality and in the aviation, is to just remember that customer is so important. If you put them at the center and think of it from the customer lens, we will build the right technologies and join them correctly. And then there's the employees. We mustn't walk past some of the massive sacrifices that many organizations have had to make to continue. And Virgin Atlantic is no different. We are nearly 50% of the size that we were before, 50%, and that's a big impact for us. And so when we are thinking about automation or bringing in newer technologies, we must be thoughtful about how we bring these things in as our people and our customers. You get those purposes and you get those strategies right, then the technology that we bring in will be perfect.
So this is a question for both of you. Do you have any forecast when does the business world will go back to normal? Is it a matter of months, years? How do you foresee the future? Maybe we'll start with you, Tom.
What's normal?
What do you see in your crystal ball?
I think I don't think it'd be a total back to normal, because to our conversation just now, and so many of you working that a total back to normal will probably not happen for all the innovative powers and innovation, just the creativity that we will get to see. But how long will it take until our economies recover, until we get to a better types of employment across the board? But, we know that in these types of situations, when you just look historically, these journeys take 2 years, often 3 years, until you're fully back at the economic output that you have been at. But I think we're looking at a very differentiated world across the board. We can see the productivity situations and the staffing situations in the healthcare space. We see it in online commerce, and you see the amount of people that got hired in that industry. When you just look at the flow and F parts that are going across the board, that will happen there. But in these phases of crisis, until you find a new equilibrium, I do think we're going to talk about a 2 to 3 year type time frame on a global basis to get there. But it is an opportunity space. Let's not wait for let's just all get through this time, and on the other side it'll be into a more balanced path. This is the time of disruption and of opportunity, very different performance across the board, that then in total will average out to improved economic performance. But I don't think we can just wait, and everybody can wait, and we will just get there. And I think we've been part of this conversation today and many others in this forum that show us we're all working to disrupt and change the world and redefine what normal actually is.
And Ash, in your industry, what do you predict is going back timeline?
I mean, so there are different. I completely. Firstly, let me just say I completely agree with everything Tom's just said. If pre-COVID 2019 levels of flying, we don't expect to see back for another 2 to 3 years as well. Our planning horizon strategically is in 4 years for some of the technology strategies that I'm involved in, and I tend to agree. I think. We just must get into a habit of, and this is my opinion, of continual adaptation of where we are at. I do agree that businesses will level out, but many countries are in recession, and so we cannot ignore that. However, that being said, there is always opportunity for investment and innovation to drive the push out of recession, and that's really what we're talking about today. We must remain optimistic. And whilst business travel may be impacted by the likes of Zoom, we have friends and family. We're a global community. We're global citizens. My family is spread across the world. I know that I will see them, and I'm sure many of you will. So positivity is definitely the way forward. But the new normal it's It's what we make it. The future is set by how we operate and how we behave as individuals. And companies, I think, would be foolish to think that they're not going to be impacted and they can get back to how things were before. That's certainly not how we think about things here at Virgin Atlantic.
So I will definitely think positively about taking a Virgin flight from Tel Aviv to London in the near future. But you mentioned a partnership with KLM and Delta. Can you speak a little bit about the nature of these partnerships?
Sure. We've been working very closely together with Delta specifically. So Virgin Atlantic is the shareholders are the Virgin Management Company and Delta, 49%, 51% respectively, and Delta have been a close partner in our transatlantic flying and globally for a number of years. And Air France-KLM are part of that joint venture with Delta. And so we all work together very closely to ensure that we provide the best routes and network destinations around the world. In terms of technology, what's really interesting is we do share ideas and innovation. And so I work very closely with the technology team in Delta, and not so closely with Air France-KLM, but we do share ideas and principles. But the Delta team and the Virgin Atlantic team do co-innovate. We are on some of their core systems, and they are also learning from us in the way that we can move fast because we're a much smaller, leaner organization, and Delta is obviously is the largest organization in aviation in the US. And so there are benefits for both parties, and that's been working very well for five or 6 years now. So that's really the nature of the partnership that we have. It's a joint venture.
Thank you. Tom, you mentioned the Bionic Company, the Bionic Corporation before. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the concept.
We think the Bionic Company is an endeavor to articulate what we think are all the things that we have to bring together to create a vibrant, winning company in the future. And it builds on a lot of the elements that we've spoken about now, but we think we need an integrative view because at the end of the day, everything has to fit together. The way companies, over the last couple of years, over the last century, had a different model, to make everything, fit together. So at the heart of that concept of the Bionic Company is a very clear articulation of strategy and purpose to the conversation we just had before. That then translates into what are specific outcomes? What are the very specific customer outcomes? What are the very specific operations outcomes? What are products and services that we need to support that business model? So how do we actually go to market and where's our winning proposition? And then around that sit everything that enables that, but that has to be done in an integrated business system. Data, the underlying technology, people, partnerships and ecosystems. And we see it being brought together by a new way of working, mainly agile, multidisciplinary, team-based skill working to bring it all together. Now, in that world, leadership has to be more driven by the overall vision, the overall outcomes that we're trying to drive to, but a measurement system has to be around it that allows us to track the progress, though not in traditional metrics, more in velocity, in customer delight, in other metrics that are probably more at the forefront for the time to come. So we think every company has its own destination, particular coming out of this world where they want to be. But we are a strong proponent that you have to put all of those pieces together. You can't just build great new technology. You can't just change the people side. You have to make sure that the business system fits together, and that makes it the overall agenda for senior leaders to advance. In that way, the opportunity for a lot of startups will be to plug into individual elements of that path that against a common framework on how it actually moves the agenda. And that's what we believe will be the journey for so many companies going forward.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. I think this is actually a great summary of the topic and the different issues that we've discussed now. And I wanted to thank you for participating in this conversation. And I'm going to bring the conversation back to Wendy. So thank you very much, Wendy, and thank you for joining us here.
Thank you, Laly. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Laly. That was a terrific session. We're now pleased to be joined by two representatives coming from different ends of the spectrum. Stephanie Miller is the Senior Vice President of the Coca-Cola Company, and Gabi Chertok is the CEO of The Builders. And first of all, thank you both for joining us. It's great to have you with us in sort of the COVID-related, the COVID version of being together at a conference. Stephanie, I'm going to start with you. As you know already, Startup Nation Central sweet spot is working with multinationals from around the world on different models as to how they can engage in the Israeli tech ecosystem. Now, Coca-Cola is, I think, an iconic example of a large company that has done that and whose footprint has only increased here in the ecosystem over time. What can you share by way of your insight and your advice for other MNCs from around the world that want to engage with the Israeli tech ecosystem?
I think you have to first understand it and appreciate its uniqueness. I think that, when you think about tech companies, I don't think every ecosystem is as nimble, and I don't think every ecosystem is as focused on really listening to understand the true needs of the business. And one of the things I'm inspired about every time I come into Israel and meet with many, many of the different startups is that there's a true partnership and the commitment to want to mutually deliver success. And so there's an active listening that takes place with the startups. And I think that as companies come into Israel, you have to appreciate that you need to be willing to share. You have to engage. You have to be willing to show your vulnerabilities so that the startups can do what they do best, which is really think to address your problems and how they can best partner with you to deliver excellence. And I think an example of that happened many years ago, but there was a startup by the name of Simagine. And the whole thing was about artificial AR specific to rooms and building out rooms. So think about apartments or bedrooms, not something that really fits with, but they really understood some of the needs that we had relative to space visualization with cooler, so that together we came up with an application that could take their technology that could be applied to in-store and actually started to decrease the frequency of visits. It decreased the number of returns that we saw, and so that their application, which was more consumer focused, actually pivoted and became more business focused to fit some specific needs that we have. And so I think as other companies come into Israel, it's really being willing to share and come in with a mindset of that technology may not be a natural fit, but I'm open and I'm forward enough to share what my issue is. Together we can partner on the right solution.
Well, it's interesting that you keep focusing on that word of vulnerability, because our experience here at Startup Nation is that we're able to be most impactful in helping MNCs engage here to the extent that they're willing to be open about their vulnerabilities and their pain points. So that's very good advice. Now, Gabi, I want to turn to you, and I have to say it's just a pleasure to have you with us, because I first met you about 6 years ago when you were in the early days of setting up the Coca-Cola presence here, and as I said before, expanding footprint, and you've been joined by other multinationals and really created a significant presence right on Rothschild Boulevard around the corner from us. So for the startups that you're dealing with on a daily basis, it's intimidating enough for them to have to think about the corporate maze as they want to get to some of these large companies. What advice do you have for the startups that are trying to do the reverse process?
So first of all, thanks for having me. And I know Startup Nation Central has been a really big part of our activity and success in our lives and in our previous years. As Mercedes, who joined us, was a partner that came directly through Startup Nation. And since then, we had also Warner Media and Walmart join us. So we're working with a lot of different types of big corporates. And I think having Stephanie as a partner on the other side is part of the magic, and having someone who's able to help to open up, to tell you really what are the problems, what are the challenges, and really share what hurts in order to be able to find the right match. But for the startups who aren't as lucky as we are to have someone like Stephanie on the other side, I think part of the magic is really trying to figure out what is the value and what is the pain that the corporate is encountering. And the main thing that every startup has to do, and it's a big challenge, is to listen. Being able to listen and to understand what is the person on the other side telling you, what's the person on the other side trying to communicate, and where in what state of mind is that person. So especially in these days, where in the world is the person, and what are the local effects of COVID on where they are? How do you interact and connect into that? Because a lot of startups, when they come, they immediately pitch. And I think part of the magic is really understanding that the person on the other side really cares about how he or she can solve their own problems. And trying to figure out how can you learn from the person, what are the problems, and then tailoring your solution, as opposed to coming and pitching your solution as an automatic kind of message. And inside corporates, one of the unique things is the understanding not only the location of the person, but also the person's setting, what's the organization going through. So reading about and preparing, understanding what the organization is going through, understanding what the person's responsibility is. Because in many cases, and as we've seen with many corporates, startups come to the corporate for the general, I'm pitching to your company, and instead of understanding how can I pitch for this person, or what solution can I provide to this person, can really be a meaningful change in a relationship with a person, with a startup, with a corporate, or people on both sides.
So you're basically making the case for deep listening, which I think is excellent advice for startups.
It's hard.
Is there anything that either of you, just by way of close, that you would layer over in terms of the COVID era specifically?
I would say with the COVID, you have to be nimble. There's a lot of energy that comes with meeting with the startups, whether they come here, whether you go to Israel. And I think that you have to make sure that you're bringing the listening, the vulnerability, and the curiosity in a way that penetrates through the separation, because I think that, I think about the brainstorming sessions we've had in Israel and the benefits from that. I think with COVID, we've got to make sure that we break through the screen barrier and we bring that energy so that we can get to those solutions and continue the progress that's been made with the builders and the application of the Israeli startups to solve our business.
Mm-hmm. Really terrific. So agility is really, you're kind of taking that to another level during COVID. Well, listen, I want to thank both of you for joining us. Having those two perspectives from Tel Aviv and from Georgia is very additive for the conversation that we're having here today. Thanks again, and great meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm now pleased to introduce Sigalit Lidai, who is a Strategic Partnerships Manager at Startup Nation Central. Sigalit, thanks for putting together a terrific discussion. I think you really managed through this combination of panelists to bring to life some of the drastic disruption that's going on in all these different innovation sectors today. I have to say I'm struck by a couple of takeaways by listening to the conversation that Laly moderated. Well, first of all, I thought one of the great moments is when Laly asked them, when are we going to go back to the new normal? And Tom basically looked at her and said, so what's the new normal? And then Ash from Virgin Atlantic said, the new normal is what we make it. So I think that really spoke volumes in terms of where this new era is headed. And then I also found it really interesting when the two of them almost talked about that the world will be divided between the companies that are just looking to somehow make it through this and muddle to the other side of COVID, and those that are doing ongoing adaptation, which is what Ash talked about, the ongoing adaptation and the agility at Virgin Atlantic. And Tom also, I thought he had a great line when he talked about it's not just recovery, but it's flourishing and leapfrogging on the other side of this pandemic. So I just thought that was a very, very, very instructive way to think about this. Now, we know that MNCs all over the world are looking for innovation in our pandemic world, and they have a lot of challenges and a lot of pain points. You're an innovation expert at Startup Nation Central, and I know you work with scores of multinationals all year long. Can you share with us a little bit about what you're doing for the MNCs, or what you're doing with them or for them?
Absolutely, Wendy. Thank you so much. So connecting multinational companies with Israeli startups is really our bread and butter. Every year, we host between 60 to 80 multinational companies, mainly Fortune 500 and Global 2000. With the pandemic, we're doing all this online, of course. The way we work, I think it's important to mention that it's a process. And we began by understanding their main pain points. And we help them crystallize their real challenges.
So when you say that you help them understand their pain points, I know that Stephanie just talked from Coca-Cola. She just talked about that an MNC has to be prepared to share their vulnerability.
Exactly.
So in some ways, that's what you're looking for.
Definitely, and we're big listeners here. This is what will help us really identify, once we gather all this information, their main, the most relevant solutions, and we give them all the tools that they need in order to create their own model of innovation that will be most relevant for their engagement with the Israeli tech ecosystem. Actually, in the last years, or during the last years, we've hosted a lot of multinationals that are related to industries, mainly because of the rise of Industry 4.0. And recently, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a growth in the demand of supply chain monitoring and remote work.
Okay, now you touched on two industries just now, and in our panel session, we heard about many different industries. What we've done this afternoon is actually invited a couple of startups from those two sectors to share with us what their technology is offering. Since you mentioned Industry 4.0, we've invited SIBO, which is optimizing production lines. And we're asking Lior Akavia to join us and share what is the SIBO technology all about. Lior, over to you.
The coronavirus crisis has had a diverse impact on manufacturers. For some industries, demand has fallen. For other industries, demand has actually risen. For example, people are buying more cleaning materials and are stocking more food. For many manufacturers, the environment became very complex. Remote monitoring, supply chain disruptions, new safety and health standards, to name just a few. And yet, the market remains as competitive as ever. For some manufacturers, even more than before. To remain competitive, manufacturers need to constantly optimize their production processes and reduce quality, yield, and waste losses. Global manufacturers like Nestle, Barilla, and Georgia Pacific use SIBO's predictive quality and yield solution to tackle these challenges. Our process-based artificial intelligence reveals the hidden causes around these losses and helps production teams to reduce losses, increase capacity, and optimize their production lines. The coronavirus crisis is a challenge for many manufacturers, but for others, it could be an opportunity. We are very proud to take part of this SNC event and to be part of a bigger ecosystem here in Israel, helping manufacturers to thrive during this period.
Thank you, Lior, for joining us. And now, staying in the Industry 4.0 sector, we're going to be hearing from Evyatar Meron of FieldBit, which is all about remote technical support for factories. Evyatar, please join us.
Thank you, Wendy. FieldBit provides the most advanced solution for field service workforce using augmented reality, SLAM engine, and image recognition. These technicians, when they service the equipment, they need to know how to service it, and together with FieldBit, they can be helped by experts that are located in remote location. Since the coronavirus pandemic, we have seen a shift in the demand for FieldBit because technicians are not able to fly anymore, and they need to support their customers, either B2B or B2C, using FieldBit. And FieldBit became a necessary solution instead of just nice to have. We are excited to be in this event organized by SNC to share information about our experience with FieldBit and to learn from other startup companies about the innovations of this market.
Evyatar, thank you very much. Well, friends, we promised polling results, and once again, we're happy to share them with you. Just a reminder on the question. The question is, what will be the focus of large innovative corporations post-pandemic? So your answers. 50% of you said focus on their in-house R&D and local partnerships. And 50% responded maintain current policies but focus on digital transformation. I think what I'm struck by is that second half that said they want to maintain current policies but also transform digitally. I think the question is how prepared are those companies to move out of their comfort zones in order to achieve that digital transformation? So that's something to think about. We are now at the end of our 3-day gathering. We hope you've been inspired. We hope you're moved to think about the new digital age in a fresh way. To add to your toolbox, Startup Nation Central is issuing a comprehensive report which is going to be released this Monday, September 14th. It's called The New Digital Age, Israel's Tech Ecosystem in the Post-Corona Era, and here is a sneak peek. I assure you that you'll encounter fresh thinking and actionable insights for moving to the post-COVID world. Now, as for taking a closer look at some of the sessions of our conference this week, all of the sessions are going to be uploaded on Startup Nation's social platforms. So Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, you're welcome to come have a closer look. So all the challenges that we've talked about in the last 3 days are clearly not behind us. In fact, as we bring this conference to a close in Israel, we're still in the heat of the second wave, and we have not yet managed to flatten the curve. But you can be sure that the best minds in Israel's tech ecosystem are in battle mode, and they are ready for global collaboration. Here at Startup Nation Central, we stand ready to connect your specific challenges to concrete solutions. Now, we'd love to welcome you live at our headquarters in the heart of Tel Aviv, which is just steps away from Rothschild Boulevard, the epicenter of the Israeli tech ecosystem. But we're also happy to share our offerings with you online. And above all, we are ready to walk with you to the new digital equilibrium. Thank you for joining us.